First off, special thanks to Ubisoft for the opportunity. Earlier this month, I was able to get hands-on with Star Wars Outlaws. I played the game for about 4 hours, and I played it on PC with an Xbox controller remotely via a software known as Parsecs. This effectively lets me remote into another gaming PC that was currently playing the game. The footage you're watching is my gameplay. It's not any B-roll provided by Ubisoft, so you're genuinely going to see me playing the game for myself. Star Wars Outlaws takes place in a period of time between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and you might notice in the gameplay some familiar territory. That's because the demo that I played was in the same area that you saw some of the B-roll that I showed earlier last month, but this time around I got to play a little bit more of an extension and even see things that they didn't show as well. I think when I look back at my experience of playing this game for 4 hours, I actually would say I came away a little bit surprised and happier than when I first looked at the game earlier last month. If I was going to describe the core gameplay of Star Wars Outlaws, I would probably describe it within these 5 pillars. There's Nyx, stealth, blaster combat, space combat, and exploration. So Nyx I think is a very crucial part of the game. It's that little companion alien that's always on Kay's shoulder or just walking around. He's just a little guy that can do a lot for you, and it's best that you get used to him and utilize him. Not only does he do base functions, whether it's scanning an area or distracting a guard or even helping you in combat, Nyx has a lot of functionality that I think in my first hour of playing the demo, I almost forgot about, and I struggled in some areas, not realizing that I had this tool here that would have made certain areas of the game much easier to traverse. The next pillar, stealth, is surprisingly a Splinter Cell light game. It was honestly the nicest surprise that I had because I really didn't think that they were going to push that heavy into stealth. There's moments in the game that actually require you to actually engage within stealth, and being discovered during these segments would immediately call a game over. So heads up JG, you're gonna suffer. Now, the actual stealth mechanics that the game does allow you to have, at least from my limited time with what they allowed me to play with in the demo, did leave a little bit to be desired, where it seems to be your main modes of interaction in stealth is using Nyx as a distraction, or also you can whistle. There's melee, so you can sneak up behind people and knock them out, or just simply sneaking around them and using like high grass or cover to sneak around patrolling guards. Now, unfortunately, I am sad to confirm that Kay cannot pick up or move and hide bodies. So once you knock somebody out, they're just stuck there, so just something to keep in mind. I know as a stealth fan myself, that's such a crucial mechanic, and not seeing it here is in fact a little disappointing, especially when the game forces you to engage in stealth. Moving to blaster combat, I have already discussed this quite a bit, so I don't think I need to expand on it a little bit more, but as you know, the main blaster that Kay uses, there's only one primary that she really uses the entirety of the time, and that blaster, however, has different modes, and each of these modes has a different function. So you have the regular blaster, which is for dealing damage, then you have an ion version, which you can use to help destroy people who are using shields, and I have like a tranquilizer or sleeper dart, which you can use for your blaster for stealth, so you can knock somebody out if you need to, and there's also your adrenaline rush mode where you can effectively mark a bunch of targets like it's high noon and just spray everybody and kill them. It actually reminds me quite a bit, like I said before, of Blacklist, Splinter Cell Blacklist, where there's the mark and execute system. Also around the environment, there may be weapons that you can find that you can pick up. And of course there is melee, and the melee, the best way I can describe it is very similar to Uncharted. You can run up to somebody and start piecing them up. However, if they are aware of you, they'll shove you off of them and punish you for doing that. But there's also space combat when you are flying your ship. The space combat actually is pretty solid, if a little bit on rails. My time and space was a little bit limited, but I did run into a cool interaction, which was with some TIE fighters where I was trying to escape an Imperial space station. And the other one, which I thought was really cool, was when I came out of hyperspace, I ran into an engagement where space pirates were trying to attack I guess some sort of convoy or a civilian ship, and I decided on intervening, and that was actually really cool, especially the environment. Wow, like something straight out of a Star Wars movie. And then finally, the last part I would say is exploration. There is a lot of secrets that you can find in this game. If you go out in the world and you do like see something in the distance or a landmark or maybe some sort of building or a base, you're gonna find something there that Kay can use. The world is pretty alive, I will say. There's wildlife moving around, there's other NPCs that are just moving around on speeder bikes or just walking around in cities, and when you're out in the big open world, there are these really cool living world events, or basically like dynamic events that will happen. I ran into a couple of them where bandits jumped me out of nowhere. That was pretty hilarious because it was like the first 5 minutes of me starting the demo and bandits were trying to kill me. That was pretty wild. And finally, of course, because it is a Ubisoft game, there are bases for you to sneak into and take everybody out, whether it's stealth or just go full guns blazing. I tried to do this once, but I definitely was underleveled. I had to retreat because they were just bringing the heat. I think it was a Crimson Dawn base. So there are syndicates that have their own bases, like gang bases, and they'll have like cool upgrades or special items that you can probably find there, or you'll have certain jobs where they need you to take out the base or they need you to get something out of that base. And then there's also Imperial checkpoints as well that are littered around the map too, and they all have their own sort of reputation and wanted systems. There's also consequences for your actions as well for every faction, not only just committing crimes with the Imperials, but also committing violence against other syndicates as well. One of the main features that I was curious about was the syndicate reputation system and how did it really work. You'll find that each of them have a relationship level with you. And as you play the game and complete certain jobs for certain syndicates, you can either garner a positive or negative reputation with that syndicate. But there are some jobs that you'll have to take on that do require you to backstab another syndicate, which can lead to some very interesting choices that you have to make in game. Throughout my time playing this demo, I had multiple opportunities during different conversations where I had to make a choice that would help one syndicate while also pissing off another. And through just this little snapshot, I could see how this could become a really interesting balancing act, as you won't be able to make everyone happy, but there are some rewards for those that you decide to ally yourself with and stay loyal to. So for those syndicates that you do help, your reputation with them will grow, and with it, you'll actually gain access to perks like full access to districts and territories that that gang currently owns, more job opportunities that that syndicate will offer to you, and there will be discounts with the syndicate's affiliated merchant on that planet as well, with exclusive stock, and last but not least, a unique gift for Kay. And these gifts range from special cosmetics to upgrades for her and her weapons. Speaking of upgrades, this time around I was also able to mess around with some of the inventory system, and of course while I can't show you some of it, I did notice that this system definitely has some of Massive's DNA woven within Star Wars Outlaws. It looks like in this game, Kay can get her hands on all types of different clothes, and some of these clothes are even part of certain sets. Some of you may recall something very similar in The Division 2, where if you complete a set, Kay will gain access to a very powerful perk. You don't have to worry about the items having some sort of power level or item power for the weapons or clothing that you may find. You don't need to worry about that at all. This is not a looter shooter. Not only are there weapons and items that you can find and upgrade Kay with, but I also found in the game that there was a group of contacts that I'm assuming as you play the game you'll discover and track down. Once you find them, you can work with them, and helping them with what they need reminded me a little bit of Mass Effect 2's loyalty missions, and in return, they'll give Kay access to brand new abilities based off of their craft, from combat to stealth to some very other interesting things that I won't tell you about because I don't want to spoil you. And finally, let's go a little bit into my pros and cons. Good news, I have actually a lot more pros than I do cons. So let's get down to it. I definitely feel like the game is very immersive. Moving around the open world and exploring was actually more fun than I was expecting. Taking the time to bet on horses or also play sabacc were probably my favorite highlights of the entire demo. A fun little fact, because I just want to pat myself on the back, the demoist did comment that I was one of the only people in my group that was able to beat the entirety of the demo and win in sabacc before the session was over. I not only won one game of sabacc, but I also found the secret game, and I beat those bums too and took all their money. Gunplay feels pretty good here as well. It reminds me a lot of Battlefront 2. Enemies didn't really feel like bullet sponges, but depending on the enemy type, they will require you to use your brain in certain scenarios, especially when dealing with shields, as you can actually, surprisingly, die pretty fast in this game. I was also very happy to see that stealth was not only encouraged, but at some points even required. Doing the main mission where I had to sneak on the Imperial space station was actually pretty stressful and was actually a difficult challenge. I died a couple times trying to complete it. I really love how there's actually choices in this game. That was really a nice surprise with what looks to be actual consequences to your choices. The characters that I ran into in this demo were all really enjoyable. So far, I enjoyed the interaction between Kay and Nyx. There's actually a really funny moment on the Imperial space station, like I said before, where Kay runs into a brand new character, and there's this entire sequence in the form of a prison break that actually gave me a good chuckle. The game knows how to have serious moments while also being a little goofy in that loving Star Wars type of way. Now, I didn't get to see anything regarding doing a heist or a lot of the main story cutscenes, but from the ones that I did get to see, they did engage me and have me interested in seeing where the story was going. And finally, of course, and I wrote this in all caps, Sabacc. Sabacc is awesome and it's hella immersive. I could easily see myself spending hours playing this game, and I was actually pretty damn good at it if I do say so myself. The game is easy to pick up, and you can even cheat at times with nicks. Now, with the pros out of the way, here are a couple of cons that I did have with my experience playing this demo. Now, the first one, which I think is the biggest one, is that I found that the AI was, in good old Ubisoft fashion, a little bit stupid, or at sometimes kind of hard to understand their current alerted status. Also, during some stealth segments, it was hard for me to figure out the listening distance of firing my weapon off. Another con that made me a little bit disappointed was that you're unable to shoot your blaster while you're on your speeder. You can get shot at by enemies who are also on speeders if you're driving your speeder, and the only way that you can shoot back at them if your adrenaline ability is fully loaded, which kind of sucked. I kind of wish that there was a way I could just pull my pistol out and just shoot at people while also driving. That's a little bit disappointing, but what can you do? Some of the jumping animations lack a little bit of polish. There was a point at the game where I was trying to get up a cliff, and where in most games this would be pretty easy to do, I found it very difficult to do without some sort of mantling system and animations for it. And then finally, my last con, some of the platforming I feel needs just a little bit of polish. Yeah, I'm that person that might actually need some yellow paint on the walls. Also, it's important for me to say that while I'm pointing these things out, that they did tell me I was playing on an older build and that some of the bugs that I ran into have already been addressed. It's very important for me to let you guys know that I did not run into a massive amount of bugs or even a very noticeable amount of bugs. These are just very kind of nitpicky stuff that I noticed that I just wanted to bring up because I'm just being transparent with you all. And that's pretty much all my cons. Like I said, I definitely came out of this with more pros than cons, but I think it's important that you get both sides of the same coin. And finally, just a little side thing, I do have some questions still about this game that I'm hoping if and when Ubisoft watches this video, hopefully they cover before the game comes out, which is, first question, how much variety will there really be with the dynamic events, and will there be enough of it before it gets a little bit repetitive? And then second, the heists. I think this is going to be a key part that's been kind of a little bit marketed, but I really would love to know more about how heists work within Star Wars Outlaws. Are they only one-time main story missions that you pull off to do heists? Is there really only one big heist like the story demands, or are there smaller one-off ones that you can do with your crew as side jobs? I would really love to know that. I'd be very interested just so, I know what to expect. And really, those are my only two questions that I have. So for my final thoughts on Star Wars Outlaws, I would say that in totality of finishing this demo, I actually walked away relatively surprised. I had a lot of questions after watching the B-roll last month, and now being able to play and try to find those answers for myself, I was satisfied with most of the answers that I found, if a little bit disappointed in some other random areas, but for the most part, it did help me set my expectations correctly for this game. I feel like this game is about one main thing, and it is about fulfilling a Star Wars fantasy about being that sort of Han Solo scoundrel. And when you understand what type of game this is, I feel like it will help you set your expectations like it did for me. Please take note that this is not about making the next big space game. It's not trying to be No Man's Sky or Starfield. This is its own game that is about immersing you in the Star Wars universe. It's about allowing you to experience the power fantasy. Imagine starting your day doing a job for the Hutt cartel, which leads you to stealing an object for them, but during that entire heist you mess it up and now the Imperials and the other Syndicate wants your head. So now you're frantically trying to weave through fields of debris while fighting off TIE fighters while preparing to go to hyperspace. Think of that in totality of one session of you playing that game. That's really what this game is trying to give to its players, and I think there's a lot here to love. Now, if you are someone, however, who's looking for something a little bit more complex or challenging, something more skewed to something like Jedi Survivor, this simply is just not that game. Star Wars Outlaws releases August the 30th, so next month, and hopefully I'll be able to get a full review out to you guys around that time. So I hope you guys found this video very helpful. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you in Space Cowboy. Wait, hold on.